Indiana County 911. My brother's gone. Can you be a little more specific, sir? He took my brother. Who took him? I don't know who took him. I don't know what. Sir, take a breath. Explain to me what happened.
And I looked out and there was this big red blinking UFO.
I can just say this. Something's going on in the woods. Something's going on.
They're not dogs, they're not coyotes. What could it be, right?
I had an encounter with a skunk ape, and it completely altered the course of my life.
I found a skull. I think you guys are going to want to come film this.
Put him out.
I just see it.
Sightings of a UFO hovering over a barn.
Millie woke up from a dream, and when I went into the bedroom, she said there's a monster on the wall.
They saw that the creature had run through a barbed wire fence. They were able to obtain hairs. They sent the hairs to their lab, and it came back as an unknown creature.
Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin.
What is up, Bizarrites, and welcome back to the most bizarre show on the internet. I am the one that 5 people now call Shane Squatch, and alongside me, I have the one, the only, the infamous, big bad, boo daddy, Sir Orin Felix himself.
Daddy, chill. So you're up to 5 people now.
Yeah, I'm building it up. As I'm building up your name, as you can tell, too. But
well, Rome wasn't built in a day. We'll get there eventually.
We're just going to keep expanding on it. I mean, people like the Sir Orin Felix, so you have been knighted officially by Bloodchugger, actually, because I got to throw him in there because he's like our #1 listener at this point. So I feel like I have to give him like a shout out almost on every episode just because we appreciate that dude so much.
Friend of the show who has also bestowed a title upon me. So, I mean, we got to show him some love, right?
And speaking of love, we did mess up just a little bit last week.
No shit, we messed something up.
As you guys can see, the next episode that came after our 1 week off break was not Bizarre Inquiries. It was actually this episode. So there's an episode in between. So that being said, Bizarre Inquiries is next week. And Orin, I guess you can give them the info on that one.
Okay, so on the day this episode drops, the next episode of Bizarre Inquiries should be tomorrow. That's Thursday, the 5th at 7:15 Eastern Time. That's going to be on the Open Minds Media YouTube channel. You guys still have plenty of time to submit questions, articles, videos, anything you want us to inquire about. And also, you guys remember to join us in the chat. It's a lot of fun getting to talk with you guys as we're talking about the articles and the material. So you guys make sure you join in and share your 2 cents with us and bust our balls a little bit if you want to. We don't care. Just join the chat.
You know what's kind of funny is we always ask people to submit clips and questions, but I think we've gotten to the point now where we have interaction. People come in, they watch the show, they enjoy the show, but I think that they just like the stuff that we find at this point. So like we've been fishing for people to submit stuff, but I feel like they just like it when we find our own shit because we find some weird, obscure shit at this point. So, we're always open to the suggestion, but if you guys don't send it in, I guess we got a thing going at this point.
I mean, especially you with your sperm Olympics or whatever the shit that was you found last time.
Oh, I got a mind-bending one for this week, and I also have a comedy one for this week. So I definitely got you covered on that one, my friend.
Oh, well, hey, you've just teased the entire audience. So
hopefully you have a conspiratorial one, because that seems to be kind of where your wheelhouse seems to fall in. We got to cover 3 different bases per show.
If I do what I'm planning on doing, unless something crazy happens in the world in the next week, it's going to be a fun one, and it is kind of conspiratorial, so there you go.
Well, I'm excited for it. And just so everybody knows, we don't give out the articles to each other before we do the show, so we are completely surprised as the show happens, and it's part of the fun of the show. So if you're wondering why we're talking very occultic, it's because we honestly don't know what each other's clips are, and we're not planning on telling each other until it's presented in front of us, because that's the fun of the show.
So we're probably going to end up doing the same thing at some point. It's going to be like 2 girls showing up to the same party in the same dress. We're going to do the, kind of paranormal version of that.
See, I just kind of quickly read the first word or 2 that you have on your article to not have too much information, but it's just a matter of time before the words are kind of flipped. And yes, that does inevitably end up happening at some point, but we'll have a back burner at some point just in case.
Well, we can just say, instead of who wore it better, who did it better. But anyway, here you also have some exciting updates on the Patreon, or what is it? The Patreon or
the Discord? The Discord.
Okay. One of those internet things.
By popular demand from a lot of listeners, and particularly Chris from Conspire Theory, he threw in this whole thing when we did a show last week mentioning that, sometimes you plant these awesome seeds, but you got to let them flourish. You got to let them turn into something. So for a while I had the Discord running. It seemed like it became a little bit inactive for a while. So, me, how I do things, I ended up just nuking it. And now I have brought it back by popular demand because I've had enough people asking for it. So if anybody wants to go and check out the Discord, hop into the Discord, meet with some like-minded individuals, contribute to the Discord, meet some new friends, whatever you guys want to do over there, you guys can hop in. And if you guys want to check that out, for whatever reason, it won't let me upload the link to to the link tree. So if you guys want to check it out, make sure you guys go to Instagram, and it should be in the links on Instagram. There also is a post for it, and I'll make sure that I post a new fresh one on the page for it so you guys can see it. But as soon as I'm able to add that as a link, once it hits so many followers, then I'll be able to put that on the link tree, and then it'll be a lot easier to access. But for the time being, link is actually down in the show description to make it even quicker and easier for everybody.
And I probably will not be in the Discord because it's chaotic and I don't like it, and it doesn't go well with my type A OCD. So if you guys want to get up with me for any reason, you can just shoot me a message on Instagram and I'll see it at some point in time, hopefully, maybe.
And speaking of getting up with you, I hear that you are going to be somewhere very soon where there might be an opportunity for people to hang out with you and possibly even have an allotment.
That is true. So funny enough, our guest for tonight's episode is also going to be present at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference in beautiful Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It's the last weekend of July. I'm not sure what that is, like 25, 26, 27, something like that. But anyway, so we're not going to be vending or anything, but me and Jenny are just going to be hanging out and going to the show. And for any of you listeners who have been following us for a while, this is just a very thinly veiled excuse to go to the mountains and drink moonshine and consider it like a work trip. But if any of you guys out there are going to be at the show, definitely hit me a message. We'd love to see you guys and hang out and, like Shane said, drink an allotment and maybe go to a moonshine tasting with you guys. So definitely hit me up if you guys are going to be at the show.
And if you guys want to pick up some awesome merchandise to possibly even wear to that show, I keep mentioning on the show, but I'm going to keep saying it. I got 2 brand new designs that I'm really proud of. The first one is called Campfire Chillin', and you got Sasquatch drinking an allotment, and you have an alien sitting there smoking a joint, opening up his third eye. No text on the design, didn't think it was needed. Really cool, cartoony design. So if you guys haven't had an opportunity to check that out, definitely check that out. And for our more conspiratorial-minded listeners, I also do have the brand new fixed and updated design for Break the Mind Control that has these marionette hands with this cool hypnotic spiral behind it. The original one for it was a little bit too faded out. I fixed it a little bit. So if anybody wants to check either of those out, you guys can get those exclusively from the Open Minds Media merch store.
And remember, you guys, we've still got the live streams going on most nights of the week at this point. It's either this show or Inquiries of Our Reality with Shane, or when we have Bizarre Inquiries, whatever the show or the topic might be. It's normally between 7 and 7:30 Eastern Time on the Open Minds Media YouTube channel.
And for another update on the Patreon is still under construction. And to give you guys a bit of an update, I was going to start opening some stuff up last week, but I had severe food poisoning last week, so I didn't really get to anything. It got to the point where I dealt with the food poisoning, and then afterwards, I had the aftermath of my entire insides hurting where I didn't even want to move for a couple days. So that did get sidetracked a week, but again, there is a bunch of new exciting things coming, and one of which I am unfortunately waiting for Printify to give the option for. It says coming soon to be able to give exclusive discount codes. Just a matter of time before hopefully that opens up, and that'll be available on the Patreon again, and you guys will get 15%, 20%, whatever tier you happen to choose. But for the time being, unfortunately, it doesn't have that. But it's way better quality than Teespring ever was. So unfortunately, I had to switch for the sake of quality for the t-shirt. So that is coming soon. And I apologize to everybody that's been waiting around for that one.
Do better, Shane.
Do better. I had to give it a little bit of a cheer for myself because you ruined my self-esteem. So I had to bring it up just a hair bit.
Do we need to bring in Billy Madison again?
Oh, no, not Billy today. Instead, we
are officially dealing with a fucking Sam Squamch.
I can't go too crazy as once we actually start the episode. So, just so everybody knows what we're getting into today, we are officially going to be dealing with some goddamn Sam Squamch today. But before we do that,
If anybody wants to be a guest on the show or get up with us for any reason whatsoever, Shayn, tell them how they can do that.
First and foremost, you guys can email us at bizarreencounters@outlook.com, or you guys can call or text the hotline, whatever's easier for you guys, and that number is 313-364-1551. And it doesn't matter how you guys get a hold of us, just don't forget to get a hold of us, because we would absolutely love to hear from you guys.
And as always, all the shit we've mentioned is in the link tree in the show description.
Please welcome to the show, for his very first appearance on Bizarre Encounters, we have Sasquatch investigator and researcher Harley Owens. How's it going today, man?
Buddy, I'm glad we made it happen here tonight, and it's finally nice to meet Orin and put a face with the name, and, you know, good to see you as always, Shayn, and look forward to sharing some of my research and experiences and sharing some pretty recent stuff that's been going on lately, so I'm super excited for that.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, Harley. Like we said, it's nice to actually meet you in person and not over the phone screen and Instagram likes and comments. And like you said, put a face to the name. And I've heard a lot about you, so it's a real pleasure to have you come on tonight. So thank you again.
Yeah, not a problem at all.
Especially on such short notice, too, because we fell into a spot where we didn't have a guest this week. So I hit you up a couple days ago, and luckily you were able to set up, man. So we appreciate it even on the other side. And this was something that was a long time in the making that I'm surprised I didn't have you on Bizarre Encounters way sooner, man, especially after the last great conversation we had. So
Hey, we're making it happen here tonight. So for everybody that's got questions, you know, put them in a chat and we'll get them answered for you best of my abilities.
Sounds good, man. So obviously I'm a little familiar with you and your research, but would you mind, for our listeners who might not be as familiar with you, telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into all this craziness and whatever you're willing and want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I'm born and raised here in East Tennessee. I'm married to my wife, Gabrielle. We have 2 girls. And so growing up, you know, you always heard stories of the wood boogers, mountain giants, all this other stuff. You know, Black Panthers were the biggest thing for me because growing up, I was real little, and me and my dad were out busting firewood, and we heard a panther scream, and Dad's like, "Get in the house now." He's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Why?" He said, "That's a panther." I said, "Okay, I'm not saying no to that." So I went running back to the house, and so that was really the only thing that I ever thought about was Black Panthers, you know, and
Black Panthers don't exist, though, right?
Yeah. You tell a game warden that. Yeah, you tell a game warden that. You ask him if you can shoot one. Oh, no, you can't shoot one. So that's a little fishy in itself. So I remember one time when I was little, we had about 15 or 16 hogs that we were going to take to the butcher, and one night all those hogs went crazy. They were screaming and squalling and carrying on. And my dad went down the next morning. Every one of those hogs were just torn to shreds, and they weren't even eat on. And so at that time as well, my aunt's dog had went missing. So Dad jokingly said, "Well, Bigfoot got the hogs." Now, these weren't little hogs. They were about 250, 300 pounds. So looking back on that, and I remember it was either the same day or the day after that the guys in Georgia that had apparently shot a Bigfoot, and it was in the freezer chest and so on and so forth. Like it was a while back when that happened. So around that time was when our hogs met their end. So growing on up through there, you know, Bigfoot was the last thing on my mind. You know, I just thought it was the biggest hunk of bull crap. You know, I didn't know anybody that had ever seen one, so you know they weren't real. And then apparently finding Bigfoot came out past where my mom and dad live because somebody had seen one cross the road. And so that was really the only other time that I had heard about Bigfoot growing up. And so
that's a good question. Why did Bigfoot cross the road?
Yeah, that's a good.
I feel like there's a good answer to that, but
yeah, absolutely.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break.
But in the meantime, don't forget to follow Bizarre Encounters on Instagram and Facebook, and don't forget to check out Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment or spark up a conversation. We love getting to know you guys.
And now back to the show.
So I graduated high school. I didn't want to go to lineman school because my dad was a lineman, and that's what he wanted me to do. He wanted me to go to lineman school and be a lineman. I'm like, well, I don't want to do what you done, Dad. I want to do something different. He's like, all right, whatever. So I went to work with my parents' neighbor. They had an auction company named Tri-State Auction and Realty. And what we done, we traveled all around the East Coast, and we traveled to Virginia, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, South North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, just anywhere and everywhere. And we were auctioning off these sawmills. So in September of 2020, we went to a place called Pound, Virginia. And lo and behold, that's where I seen my first Bigfoot. And I got a photograph of that Bigfoot. I've recorded some sounds that it had made. Because I had a spectral analysis done of that audio, and it confirmed that there was more than one creature making those sounds. And so that really humbled me real quick.
I got a quick question about the sounds actually before, because I always forget to ask this question to people that have actually like heard these sounds completely directly. Like I've had my experiences with just like little subtle stuff, but you've heard like the full blown like boost. Like everybody hears these recordings, and with the recordings, like obviously you don't get like the depth to it. So like when you're actually there and you're hearing this, like how would you like describe like the depth of it? Like, do you feel it in your chest? Like how strong and like potent is this sound when you're actually there in person hearing it? Not to interject, but I've been curious.
It reverberates through you. You know, you feel real puny, and it's a primal fear. That's the best way that I can describe it. You know, you standing face to face with a bear. You know, there's somewhat of a fear there, but when you hear one of these Bigfoot, you know, that's a whole different ball game in itself. So, you know, I managed to get a picture of it. You know, I recorded the sounds. I recorded 3 different sets of audio. That I recorded the first set the day after I seen the creature, and then I recorded the other 2 sets the next night. And so I remember like when I first heard it, I'm sitting there and I'm going to get a peanut butter sandwich and Coca-Cola out of my cooler. I hear a growlish grunt. Now, I grew up hunting and fishing, and I'm like, that's a sound that I had never heard. And so I was in this valley, and there was 2 ridges on both sides of this valley. And I'm sitting here looking in the valley all around me, and I don't see this thing, you know, but I heard it. And I heard it again, and it was up on the high wall, and it was moving through the brush and the foliage. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at it like, okay, all right, that's the bear. That's a bear. Because the owner of the place told me there was a bear coming into the sawmill area and getting in the trash. And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking, and I look down at my sandwich and my Coke, and I look back up, and it was doing the classic peekaboo thing. You know, how you always see them wrapping their arm around a tree and they're leaning out and looking at you. And as soon as I seen it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a Bigfoot. These things are real. People aren't crazy. And the only thing I knew was to take a picture, you know, because if I tried to take a video of this thing, it would have took off. So I pulled out the phone and snapped the picture. I had a brand new iPhone 8 Plus at the time, and it just shut off, unbeknownst to me. But I'll get into that a little bit later because I have a theory on that kind of stuff. And so after that, you know, I'm standing there at a face-off with this thing. It's got the high ground, so I'm screwed. And so it eventually just turned around and it walked back up the ridge. And so I jumped in the truck, I locked the doors, and I cracked the windows so I could hear. And I'm like, oh my gosh, come back on, phone, come back on. It finally comes back on, and lo and behold, there's the picture. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. So I didn't get back out of the truck for the rest of the day. And then right at dusky dark, that's when they started hollering. And that, like I said, I've had a spectral analysis done of the audio, and based on the tone and the sounds that were being made, there's different individuals, and their vocalizations range from 200 hertz all the way up to 2,000 hertz. So that's well beyond the range of any human. Mm-hmm. So, and I remember the next day I get back out there, and so I found the footprints of where it had came down after I had left into that sawmill area. And I'm a big boy. I'm 6'6", and I could not do the strides in between these tracks. So I don't know how big the one I saw was. I would imagine it was at least 8.5 foot tall. I mean, it made me feel real puny. And so I remember going on to that evening, the day I found the tracks, which was September 24th of 2020. They were hollering again, but they were about 15-ish minutes apart, and they were kind of further away. But still, for them to be further away, it sounded like they were right up on top of me. And so I remember leaving the next day. I went to a little drive-in diner called Robo's, and I seen these old timers sitting there, and I'm like, okay, if anybody's going to know what the hell I seen, it's going to be these old boys. So I go sit down with them. I strike up conversation. You know, I'm just asking them how their day went, yada, yada, yada. And then I drop the bomb on them. I'm like, I look at them all and I said, y'all ever seen or heard anything weird in here? And they kind of looked at each other, and one of them said, well, what'd you see? And I said, this. I showed them the picture of it. I let them listen to the sounds, and I showed them the footprints, and they all got quiet. And then one other one said, well, those are the devil monkeys. And I said, devil monkeys? Because that was that engraved itself in my head. I'm like, devil monkeys? I've never heard of the devil monkey. And I'm like, so that's Bigfoot? They're like, yeah, devil monkeys, wood boogers, mountain giant, Sasquatch, Yowie. It's all the same thing. And I'm like, all right, that's all the validation I need. And so little did I know that when I would get home, you know, I told everybody. I told my family. I told my friends. You know, I told everybody. And boy, did I turn into the crazy person. And I shut it out. I never told anybody after that for 3 years. I stopped hunting and fishing, and it took a toll on me. I didn't go hunting and fishing, and I loved hunting and fishing. And so August of 23, I started opening up and telling my story. And you know, I enjoyed sharing my story and getting it out there. And then it got to the point of like, I need to get back in the woods. Well, Thanksgiving of 2023, I decided to go back deer hunt. And so I'm paranoid at this point when I'm going into the woods. You know, it's dark and I'm just sitting here and I'm like, man, am I really doing this? And it's like, yeah, I am. So I overcome what I thought was a fear of the Bigfoot. And I've since learned there's a lot of other crazy shit to fear besides the Bigfoot. So
it's funny when you get into stuff. It's like Bigfoot is your entry level in, and then you feel crazy talking about Bigfoot. But once you get in, it's like Bigfoot's like in the beginning, like that's like the minimum of like what you end up getting into talking about, where it's like it's so weird how you just completely become desensitized to this stuff once you actually get into it, you know?
Absolutely correct. And you couldn't have said it any better. So December 7th, I started doing the research. You know, I didn't have any clue what I was doing. And I looked up Bigfoot research in East Tennessee because I didn't know what the crap I was doing. I needed somebody to learn from. And lo and behold, Scott Carpenter's name had pulled up, but unfortunately he passed away in August of 23. So I'm kicking myself in the ass because I wish I started doing it sooner so I could have actually learned from him. But the good Lord upstairs works in mysterious ways, and it was my time to start this when I did. So I had my second encounter December 14th of 2023 in my very, very successful research area that I've taken multiple other people in, and they've had their first experiences in there. So I go out with my wife, and we're going up the trail, and all of a sudden she stops, and she says, look at those sticks. I said, what sticks? She says, those sticks over in the woods. I said, what about them? She said, that's something out of a war movie. And I'm like, okay. She's like, you know how the old movies, they have the sticks stabbed down the ground? I'm like, yes, honey, I know. And so I said, stand right here. She said, okay. So she's standing on the main trail. I go off the trail. I get maybe 20, 25 yards off the trail, and I see two logs laying like this, side by side. And I looked in between those two logs, and the leaves were matted down like something was laying there. And I'm like, okay. So I stepped it off. I wear a size 12, and so it was roughly 8.5 feet. And I was like, all right, okay, this is if this is a black bear, it's the granddaddy of all of them. Mm-hmm. And so I hear something ahead of me moving. I hollered up my wife. I said, stand right there. I'm going to ease on back into the woods and see what this is. I say, it's probably a bear. So I get further on back into the foliage there, and I come across this huge game trail. So I don't know if the elk were using it or what, because there were some high breaks, but I didn't know if it was the elk racks doing it or if it was actually the Bigfoot. But I'm pretty sure I've determined it's the Bigfoot now. So I'm standing there in this trail, and all of a sudden I just have this intuition that I need to look to my right. Like it was just the last thing on my mind. Why do I need to look right? So I stopped and I turned and I seen it. This reddish brown Bigfoot stepped in behind the tree, and I'm like, oh crap. And it's a lot closer than the first one. Mind you, that when it was up on that cliff face, it was about 55, 60 yards away. This one, it was real close. So it was within 25, 30 yards. And I'm like, I know you're behind that tree. I'm like, I'm telling myself in my head, I know you're behind that tree, so step out. And it steps out, and it's quartering me. We're looking face to face at each other. And there's a laurel bush right beside of that tree. And so he crouches down, and he peeks his head out from the bush, and he's looking at me. I can see him real good. He's got gray skin. He's got jet black eyes, the reddish brown hair. And I'm mesmerized by this thing. And as I'm looking in its eyes, it's like a humanness about it. I'm like, this is not an ape. And so originally that's what I thought is Gigantopithecus or something like that, because I love Jurassic Park. I love stuff like that. And so I initially thought Gigantopithecus. And it was when I was looking into the eyes, it was too human. And like, if I was hunting and I seen that looking back at me, that would be murder. So I'm sitting there. All of a sudden to my left was loud pop and a smack of a branch breaking, a really big branch. And then behind me, something, I don't know if it was stomping in place or if it was running towards me, but I knew I got the hell out of Dodge. But here's the funny thing. I had a pistol on my right-hand side. So when I was coming in, my pistol was facing towards the first one. Now, I never seen the other two. I only seen the one. But when I turned to lock eyes with him, my pistol was facing back towards the trail, and they were all opposite directions from the pistol. So there ain't nobody can tell me these things don't know what guns are.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very, very intelligent, and they know how to remain hidden. And like I said, I've had people out in my research area, and they're like, these things are literally ninjas, because there's so much foliage, there's so much vegetation, and it's like they can remain hidden. And I'm like, yeah, they're the watchers for a reason.
Dude, a lot of the time, these things seem like they almost know, like, war tactics. Like, I've talked to enough people that talk about this idea that these things will, like, stay up high on certain hills, and then they'll have, like, scouts that'll sit on the outside, where they'll have, like, a group of them sleeping in the middle, and they'll be able to see for, like, a long distance, and if anybody's coming, they know, like, a direct path down. Like, I don't know if it's just from them, like, adapting to, like, learning things over the years, or it's an intelligence factor to it, but, like, there's so much, like, military ideology behind, like, their movement and placement. And I mean, even something else I was thinking about, if you're on top of a ridge and you're like a scout, obviously these things seem to understand the idea of like repercussion of sounds and like noise, vibration. So like, I'm sure 100% these things are aware of the fact that if they sit up on top of a hill, they make themselves sound 10 times louder. So if there's any predators for like miles, you're going to scare these things away. Like, these things know what's up, man. These things are intelligent.
They are much more intelligent than what people take them to be. They're not the friendly Harry and the Hendersons type. They want to be left alone. And quite frankly, people say there's good ones, but I don't trust any of them. So, and there's always more than one. I've learned that if there's one, there's at least two or three more with it.
Unless it's a rogue, and that's a whole other problem.
The rogues are a whole different issue within themselves. Thankfully, I've not ran across a rogue one yet, but I'm not ruling it out that it won't happen. It'll be a matter of time when I come across the wrong one. But so far, it's not been like that.
You just got to be you don't have to be the fastest runner. You just can't be the slowest. You just got to make sure you have a couple people with you.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. But there ain't much meat on my bones anyway. I'd be nothing but a dang on toothpick.
Hey, even Sasquatch needs a toothpick. Gotta use something to pick everybody else out.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that bizarre stuff you crave.
But just a quick reminder, if you would like to snag some gear from this show, inquiries of our reality, or one of your favorite creatures or topics, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs and new drops regularly, and t-shirts for the low price of just $15.68. That's oddly specific, plus shipping.
And we're back with the high strangeness. Let's get back into it.
And so the first time that I ever really had anybody come out with me was January 7th of last year. It was me, my good friend George Lunsford, and Robert Effler and Robert's wife, Michelle. And we're going through my research area. You know, I'm showing them all these tree structures and things like that. And we start finding footprints, you know, and I'm like, well, they're here. You know, these are fresh footprints, so we're not too far behind them. And we actually found a couple of dogman tracks, you know, the huge canine tracks. So when we're working our way back out, I nudged George on the shoulder. I said, me and you, we're going to go down this little path right here, and we're going to work our way down this holler, and Robert and Michelle can stay on the main trail, and we'll stay in walkie contact. And he's like, all right, whatever. And I said, if we're going to see one, it's going to be down here. He's like, okay. You know, I didn't think he really had high hopes of seeing one. You know, much less he had never seen a Bigfoot. He's seen UFOs, ghosts, and stuff like that. So we're working our way down through this holler, and eventually we come across the ridge, and there's a little bitty dip, and then it comes up to another little ridge across from us. And I'm sitting there and I'm walking, and all of a sudden I catch something big and black moving through the laurel bush, and I'm like, okay, I see you. And it went in behind the tree, and it peeked out to look. He just had his head peeked out. He didn't have his whole body peeked out, and I stopped. I said, George, there he is. He said, Harley, that's a shadow. I said, George, that's a Bigfoot. I just seen it walk. He said, are you serious? I said, yes. I said, stand right here. So he stood right there and was watching it. I walked towards it. I didn't step 15, 20-ish feet. I stepped on a branch, and it sounded like a shotgun going off. We've since named this Bigfoot Alfalfa. He reached up, braced himself on the tree, and he leans to look for me because I was where he couldn't see me. And next thing I know, I hear my buddy George say, oh, shit. And he comes running past me towards the Bigfoot, and I'm sitting here contemplating my life decisions, and I'm like, what are we doing? Are we chasing this thing? And so we get up there to the tree where he was at, and right there in the mud, it was sleeting and raining on us. Right there in the mud was 3 perfect toes, and then a slight pinky toe and a slight big toe. But the reason we named him Alfalfa, because when it was sleeting and raining, his hair was sticking straight up like that. So we named him Alfalfa, and I run into him every now and then. He's a hoss cat, man. I know for a fact the tree branch where it was broken off at was the top of his head, and he was almost 9 foot tall.
Wow!
And so he was over 4 foot at the shoulder. He's a massive, and I'm very familiar with him. I'm pretty sure he leaves the 22-inch tracks that I find. He's a big boy.
22-inch tracks. I mean, wow. It's almost 2 foot long footprint. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's not the biggest one I found though. I found a 26-inch. So I'm not sure who leaves that one, but there's one bigger than him in there, and I haven't seen it yet. But I find all sizes of tracks. You know, I find little bitty ones, and they're all different. Some of them are real wide, you know, and then some of them just real long and skinny. But they're like us, you know. They're all genetically different.
Mm-hmm.
Just to bring up something that we had mentioned on a previous episode, and I'm sure that Orin's going to know exactly where I'm going with this. Have you found any of the 3-toed prints?
I have.
You have,
but they're not like the Bigfoot footprints. You know, they're not humanist footprints.
Do you want to get into this one with them real quick, Orin, or do you want me to explain it?
I mean, you can go ahead and go.
Okay, so if you haven't talked to Timothy Renner yet, he's been researching this phenomenon where it's the three-toed tracks, but he started connecting it with ancient folklore with this like bird-footed like woman or the lady in like white that like hangs out around like Sasquatch or around these like wild men type beings. And he's found that almost everybody that has a spot that's like a reoccurring thing, they always find these three-toed prints. And like you mentioned, they're not Sasquatch prints as much as people like to mention them. He says they're actually these birdfoot type prints. Like you should go back and listen to our previous episode or get in contact with Timothy, and you should add into that because he's been particularly researching that phenomenon.
Oh, crap. I was not expecting that.
Which starts getting into some weird stuff, because I know you kind of dive into some of the Nephilim stuff with this. So, I mean, it kind of starts getting into this more ancient aspect of, like, what's the attachment? What are these things actually? Like, why is there always this woman in white that's also usually seen on the property? That was the other question I was going to ask. Have you seen a woman in white?
Lilith.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my gosh, man, I don't want nothing to do with that kind of stuff. I'm all for tracking Bigfoot and dogman and all this other stuff. You sign me up for ghosts, that's when you lose me. Hell no.
Go the opposite direction of those three-toed prints then, man. Don't go that way.
Well, I'm gonna try and pull up a picture of three-toed print that I found. Hang on just 1 second.
You should be able to screen share. It should give you access. It should be on the bottom of the screen if you can see it.
I'm trying to pull it up here. Hang on just 1 second. Yeah, it's not cooperating with me, but the three-toed tracks that I found, it's like this is the pad of the foot, but then the toes come off like that, but they're three-toed.
Can you send this through social media? Because I can bring it up on my screen real quick if you're not able to.
I'm not. I'm using my phone. I ain't using the laptop.
Oh, okay, for sure. I was saying, if you send it to me afterwards, then I can add it in.
Actually, hold on just 1 second. I think I have the picture. Hold on, because I have a photo album. Hang on.
I'm really into this one.
I
really got to see this footprint. Like, I haven't actually seen too many pictures of these three-toed prints, so I may want to make sure that I take the opportunity here.
Yes, hold on just 1 second. I've got a picture of it. If I'm not mistaken, it's in here. I got a big old photo album full of pictures. Yes, I do have it. It's right here.
Perfect.
Yeah, this is it right here. Well, this works just as good. But they're as big. They're as big as my hand, and I have a pretty good sized hand.
Oh wow!
So 1, 2, 3.
Tell me that doesn't look like a giant bird print like Timothy was mentioning too, right? Because it almost kind of looks like a duck foot, like that kind of shape with like webbed toes or something.
But I found that before Gatlinburg conference last year. It was July 24th. And as I'm sitting there looking at those prints, I hear a clicking noise. Straight out of the Predator movie. That's what it sounded like, the clicking from the Predator. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, is there a Predator out here in the woods with me right now? And so, as you know, Shayn, I use a GoPro behind me to record behind me while I'm out there. And that's how I get a lot of the stuff that I get.
Smart.
But this is what was making that clicking noise. And it moved so quick. It was behind a tree, and it literally just goes, phoo, phoo, and it was so quick. So I had to scrub through it enough to get it. And this is what it was. Does that look like a gray or a reptilian or what is? I don't know why my camera's doing that.
100%. I can see it.
Yeah, you can definitely like make out a face. It looks like, and kind of like shoulders and a torso.
It's I'll send it to you or on media, but it looks you can see it clear as day in the original the image, but it was right there behind me and it moved so fast. And I've showed it to other people and they're like, oh, that's a gray. Oh, it's a reptilian. And my wife said, well, that's a dinosaur. I'm like, what is it then? I don't know. Everybody's telling me these different things and it's just like, I don't know what the hell it is. But it definitely had me scratching my head there for the longest time. But I do know whenever I hear that clicking sound, that thing's around.
Yeah, get the hell out of the damn woods.
Yeah.
So
I don't.
I'm sorry, but kind of piggybacking off of that, like, what do you think these Bigfoot creatures actually are, in your opinion? Because I know you had said that, you went into this thinking kind of the Gigantopithecus theory, and then once you saw one, you thought they were much more human, but then you've had these weird encounters with things that aren't very Bigfoot-like at all. Do you think it's, the same phenomena wearing different masks? Do you think there's, something biological going on or something more woo-woo? I mean, I know it's an impossible question to answer, but
I'm a man of faith, but I'm far from perfect, but I know I can get down to the end of the days and ask my Lord Savior for forgiveness, for my sins or whatever I've done wrong. And so I came into this full head to toe from a biblical narrative. I looked at Cain. Cain was cursed to be a restless wanderer of the earth, and it doesn't really dive too much into context of how he was cursed. Okay. And Esau is proud, and my buddy Doc Brown from Prometheus Lens, he just wrote a book called The Epic of Esau, and he done his research, and it's like, it goes into the birthright and the seed war. So Esau was born head to toe covered with red hair, and he was intertied with the Nephilim giant, so on and so forth. And I initially thought, well, that could explain some of it, but then it got to the point of like, okay, the orbs, the UFOs, dogmen, these gray alien reptilian, whatever you want to call it, and it's the mind speak. And it was just like, there's something else. And so then I went back and looked at Scott's videos, and he was talking about the Nephilim, the offspring of the human women and the sons of God, the fallen angels. And so even when you go and look at the Sasquatch Genome Project, and there's a lot of debate behind that, and everybody's saying it's all just a bunch of BS, but I think it's legit, because Scott Carpenter had sent samples from here in the Great Smoky Mountains, and it shows that Sasquatches have the mitochondrial DNA of a human mother from 2,000 years ago, and the father is something completely unknown to science. Well, that just throws every red flag in the book for me, and that's the fallen. And then like based on some of like the genetic material and stuff, it shows that they shouldn't even be alive. And so then it goes into the fact of, I've been debating on this too. What if, these bodies are just vessels for the Nephilim spirits? Because the Nephilim spirits, they're still on this earth. When the flood came, it just wiped them all out. And so the spirits are still on this earth. That's why we have demons, so on and so forth. And so with these bodies, they're essentially being used as vessels, and that's like the dogman, they're the government assets or whatever the case may be. For Joe Barber's incident, he unalived one that was trying to get in his truck, and the vehicle rolls up, you killed our asset. And so it's just like, and the giant cover up, everything in this is all intertwined and connected. And I always encourage people, keep an open mind. There's nobody in this that's an expert. Could I be completely wrong? Absolutely. But 2 and 2 don't make 1. So it's just like, there's red flags in this.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you brought up the possibility that these, Bigfoot type bodies could just be a vessel basically for this disembodied Nephilim spirits. Something that I've come across a lot just in research and listening to various podcasts and stuff recently is this idea that, and you're probably much more familiar with the scripture than I am, so you can correct me as I go, but this idea that, the Nephilim spirits were trapped in the mountains and in the earth. And I've heard people bring up the idea that, okay, all these weird things happen in the Appalachian Mountains. Could it be that, these spirits were trapped in various mountain ranges, across the globe. And that's why all this weird stuff happens, not only in the Pacific Northwest with like Mount Shasta and that sort of thing, but also, this hotbed of activity that is the Appalachians.
Yeah, and even the Middle East with all the giants. I mean, always seen in the mountains, just throw another one in there.
Yeah, the Kandahar giant's a perfect example of that. He's a red-haired giant, and it's like, Esau was covered and head to toe with red hair, but that thing has red hair, so it's like, it's all intertwined and connected, and it's a rabbit hole to go down. And it's definitely hard to comprehend and wrap your head around, much less, and a lot of people don't understand this about, the fallen. The fallen did not just procreate with human women. They experimented on animals and even plants, and that's how I think that's how we have, these centaurs, these satyrs, and all this stuff that we see in Greek mythology.
Yeah.
And,
even like in ancient Egypt, these like dog-headed gods and whatnot.
And the giants exactly even mixed in with that on top of it.
Yes, exactly right. And it makes you wonder, if like these gods are the fallen, these their worship, they're all every other religion, is like, like for instance, Zeus, Zeus could have been one of the fallen. So it makes you wonder. It definitely makes you scratch your head and wonder on some of these things.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in a flash.
But if you guys don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Inquiries of All Reality on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. That's less than a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts or premium video versions of episodes, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits and 7-day free trials available.
And now back to the show. No, I'm with you 100% on a lot of that. And, an idea that we talk about a lot on the show is, these people in these ancient cultures were probably depicting what they actually saw. As much time and effort and energy as it took to make these carvings and paintings and things like that in ancient times, they're not basically writing bedtime stories on this stuff. Right. They're depicting things that they thought they were important and what they actually saw. And in light of, everything you're talking about, the whole Nephilim and gods and the fallen angle, I think it makes perfect sense that that's what these things are. And, we talk a lot on the show too about, one person's demon or one person's alien is another person's god or Nephilim. And largely we're all talking about, like you said, with the wood boogers or the devil monkeys, we're all talking about the same thing here. It's just different names for it,
Absolutely right. And, and Revelations, I can't remember which verse it is right off the top of my head, but it says in the end times, the beast and the beasts of the earth will be unleashed. Well, what's the beasts of the earth? Bigfoot, dogmen, reptilians, whatever else under the sun that we don't know about yet. So it's like, and even this is something else that I found interesting lately. So I've seen an article that I read the other day that this company is going to start making T-Rex leather purses. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, how are they going to do this?
Don't we have a movie about how this isn't a good idea?
Colossal Biosciences made a designer dire wolf, and like it's you play God, you're going to feel the wrath. And so this company, what they're going to do, they're going to take T-Rex collagen and start making leather purses. And so it's sitting there, and I'm like, I got to thinking about it. I'm like, if that's true, how is it alive after 65 million years? And then you go back and look in like cave paintings and stuff like that, and you see pictures of dinosaurs with people. Much less Absolutely. There's a painting from, I can't remember, somewhere in Europe, and like in the background of the picture, there's two long-necked dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't been, the Ark Encounter in Kentucky, that place is super cool. But when I went in there and was looking around, they didn't have the full-grown dinosaurs on the Ark. They had babies. And so it was like, no, that makes perfect sense.
I mean, we're still convinced that all these dragons that they talked about during medieval times were the dinosaurs, and it's just different wordage and verbiage for it. And they just expanded on the stories and made them something bigger than they were. But now that we're diving into it, it's like all these dragons were depicted with like feathers with this. And it's like now that we're looking into stuff, we're realizing that these things were more bird-like than anything. It's like all the pieces are connecting, dude. Like I think they were around with people. And again, we just called them dragons for so long until they died off. And then they became folklore and then they got rediscovered again.
Yes, dragon was around way before the word dinosaur was. So essentially, they're just dragons.
Mm-hmm. You talked about how you're a man of faith, and like people that kind of, and I appreciate like people who people who are Christians, but also entertain, an open mind about this sort of thing. Because even as a kid, it used to always bother me when people would be like, "Oh, well, clearly there's not dinosaurs because the Bible doesn't say anything about them." I was like, "Well, that word was not invented, and people were describing things with the best language they had." And Shayn, to your point, even like, Mesoamerican folklore talks about like feathered serpents and things like that. So,
they didn't use the word blue in the Bible. It doesn't mean that blue doesn't exist.
Blue, like Blue's Clues, or the color?
Just the color. Like, it wasn't referenced until like relatively recent in history. Is one of those things that, when they describe the ocean, they talk about like reds and all this stuff. Like, just because the color wasn't referenced then and that word wasn't something that was in the verbiage doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And I always got to bring in CERN into everything. So I'm going to throw this one in just because we're talking about, opening portals, end times, all this kind of shit. Looking at the different context of like who the fallen angels are, I always bring up like Hindu religion with this, because the whole premise of the religion was built off of one, destroy to rebuild, that whole concept, on top of the fact that all the gods were breeding with people, and that's half of the religion is the sexual component into, breeding with, or having intercourse with the gods and all of this. So, I mean, you bring that component in and you look at it from that perspective, and then you see CERN with the giant Shiva outside the front. And again, it connects into all this stuff and makes a lot more sense that we're all talking about the same thing, just from different viewpoints. And it's a matter of like, if somebody comes into your area and they start giving you knowledge, like, of course, you're going to like look up to them like they're the gods because you don't have any other outside reference point. But when you step back and see the broader perspective of everything in general, it's like you start looking at these certain groups and you're like, all right, this fits the fallen angel story. It's just a matter of perspective and like how you're viewing it. But like Hindu religion in particular, that one definitely connects in. And obviously everybody knows all the weird mountain ranges and everything that are over in that area. So even connecting back in with the whole mountain aspect of things too. So
yeah, absolutely correct. And that's another thing you talk about, connecting the dots. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the gods and, the women, they had demigods. So, it's like that's the fallen there, the fallen procreating with human women and, having these men of renown, so to speak.
So, Harley, I do have a question for you since Shayn brought up the whole CERN aspect of all this.
Yeah,
I do have another CERN article, by the way, for the next Bizarre Inquiries. I got one covered for us. So
I've got some stuff on CERN. They're right in my backyard.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So, being that you're from East Tennessee, are you familiar with the whole Oak Ridge labs and the particle collider there? And do you think that could have any connection to all this high strangeness that you're experiencing in your neck of the woods?
Oh yeah. And this is for entertainment purposes only. Dropping this bombshell right here, right now. I know of another one, but I'm not talking about it, but I know where there's another one at.
Okay.
But it is in the national park.
I think that there's a lot more of these things in a lot more places than people realize. And it may even tie in with the weird phenomenon that people that live out in the hills and stuff will talk about, how they hear this like mechanical sound coming from under the ground. Like, I'm curious if they're making these things all over the place and people aren't aware of it.
Well, and me and you talked about this, Shayn, in the end times, these smart cities, everybody's going to fall into order. When the rapture happens, they're going to blame it on the aliens. And so if you go to the smart cities, you're going to be safe. Well, if you go out of the smart city, you're fair game for the beast. Me and you've talked about this, Shayn. Like, it's a rabbit hole to go down, man. But like, I definitely think some of these things are made and used as weapons. I definitely think that. And this is for entertainment purposes only.
I mean, even on the flip side, talking about like Dogman and Sasquatch and everything, we talk about the whole idea that a lot of this phenomenon we think is multifaceted. There's not just one specific answer to where these things are coming from. Like, I definitely think that there's like a natural component to Dogman, but on the other side of it, there definitely seems to be this other like more militaristic idea behind Dogman. And whether it's they're trying to take these wild ones and try to tame them and use them for their own, or they're creating them because they were inspired by seeing these things in nature. Like, there is some type of like government tying component to these things, but I think that there's also the more for sake of a better word, like more natural component to it, whether that's supernatural or not. I mean, that's like a whole other thing for debate, but something that is causing these things that isn't some type of human intervention or some type of human gene editing, but there's still something to it. Because otherwise, like you mentioned with the one from Michigan where the trucker put the shot into the guy or into the dog man who was trying to climb into this cab. I mean, there's endless stories about that, and having these like unmarked vehicles come and stop people, like particularly in the Manistee, since you were talking about that area, we covered it, but like, I've heard of multiple researchers that have gone to and try to investigate that area, and they'll have like unmarked vehicles stop them and say, we know what you're doing in the area and you need to leave before you get into anything else. And I mean, maybe I'll make it out there one day and have one of those experiences, but I mean, like, there's something weird going on in specific areas. And I think the Manistee and Land Between the Lakes, there is some government component to those two areas in particular.
I'm moving to the Land Between the Lakes in the next couple of weeks, so I'm leaving my East Tennessee home behind, and I'm gonna be 30 minutes from the Land Between the Lakes, and I'm super excited about that. I'm gonna keep my camper down here though, so I can still come out here and do some research. But
don't park your camper in there. You see how that goes.
Yeah,
we learned that one back in the 80s.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna be living in a town called McEwen, and I'm gonna be 30-ish minutes away, so I'm going to be doing a lot of boots on the ground in there, and good Lord willing that I don't get eaten by one of them dog men. I've had my fair shares of running with the dog men, and that's a whole different can of worms. They are something else, man. They put the fear of God in you, man. Much less when you look into their eyes, it's evil. They're evil, man. They much less seeing one in a tree. That was terrifying in itself. And that happened recently. I seen one in a tree on April 19th of this year.
So what, if any, connection do you think there is between Bigfoot and Dogman? Because, you hear a lot of people theorize that maybe like the Dogmen are the minions of Bigfoot and things like. Do you think there's anything to that, or are people just trying to connect dots that might not necessarily be there?
I think that they fall from the same type of origin, just different ways, but they still have the same ancestral lineage. I don't think that they fight, that there's people out there that think that they duke out all the time. In my research area, they're both in there, and there's some sort of cohabitation in there. And I would think that we see it in nature all the time, that there's symbiotic relationships. Why would two apex predators benefit from just fighting all the time and killing each other off when they could have like a mutual respect? I would think that it would be like us using dogs for hunting, and I would think that, the Bigfoots have a little blind set up, and I've found some like these trees that are all bent over and just piled in and brought in from different areas, and it's a perfect hunting blind. And so I sit there and I ponder. I'm like, if Dogman, runs the deer or whatever, Bigfoot just reaches out and grabs it, gets first picks, and then Dogman get the scraps essentially. So it's like, I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found any of these like kill walls or anything? Because you mentioned the blind, but I've been kind of fascinated by this concept that I've only heard a few people say that they've seen, where it's almost like they set them up like a corral almost, where the whole idea is that they'll like push a bunch of deer into this area, and then once they're closed off, then they can basically just sit at the end and just take them one by one. Have you by chance come across anything that seems like it's relatively close to these?
I have not. Like I said, where I research at, there's nothing but mountain laurels. And you have mountain laurels out there, don't you, in Raleigh? The big green bushes that are green year round?
Not so much here. It's just basically all concrete here. But, I grew up in a very rural area of eastern North Carolina. So, I'm familiar with all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. The mountain laurels, like if you've never seen them, like it's excellent cover for them. And I have not found anything like that yet, but if I do, you'll be the first to know.
All right, guys, we got to take another break. We'll be right back. And now we're getting back to the bizarre. So, Harley, before we kind of start moving towards wrapping up, I've heard through the grapevine from various friends of the show that you've had some pretty cool encounters and investigations here recently. And I know you can't share too much about it, but is there any teasers you can give us about what you may or may not possibly, again, just for informational and entertainment purposes, have been up to lately?
Like Dogman in a tree.
Dogman in a tree. I'll break that down. So April 19th, I went out to my parents' property, and walking down through the woods there, I was looking for morel mushrooms or hickory chickens, whatever you want to call it. And I was walking with the dogs. They have blue heelers and Aussies, and we were walking down the trail, and I get to the point of where I'm getting close to the cave is. And the creek just runs right by my parents' house, and it runs down into the creek. And the dogs just start going crazy, and they were barking like I'd never heard them bark before. And I'm like, well, this is strange. And so I get going down towards where they are at, and I'm looking up in the tree, and I see something black moving around, and I'm like, well, that's probably a bear. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking, and I'm like, yeah, this is a bear. Well, I took a picture, and when I looked at the picture and when I looked back up, I'm like, oh, that's not a bear. It was a dog man. It was a little one. And I was like, oh crap.
So it was a puppy man.
Yeah, juvenile, whatever you want to call
it. Dog boy?
And, dog boy, yeah. And so it's up in that tree, and it's throwing a fit. It's breaking branches and everything like that. And I'm like, I'm trying to grab all these dogs. And mind you, they weren't on leashes. I had to grab all these dogs by their collars and try to get them out of here. I'm like, come on. Well, I finally get them away from the tree, and up on the ridge behind me, I hear something else, and I'm like, oh crap. And I took another picture, and peeking its head out of the bush is a bigger one. And I'm like, oh, crap. And so I'm like, come on, dogs, come on. But I think I figured out what killed, unalive the hogs of my dad. So, I mean, Bigfoot's one thing. Dogman is it's a whole different can of worms to open. But to go into kind of what Orin touched base on, me, Doc Brown from Prometheus Lens podcast, Drewski from Cryptid Warfare podcast, Riley from Midwest Mythos, and Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress. And Kevin from Where the Weird Ones Are. We all took it out into my research area, and we camped out there for 3 days. Well, Friday, Saturday, and we left on Sunday. And we all experienced something in some way, shape, or form. And I really hope that you all will see this film whenever it's released. You can keep up with me and everybody else that I've mentioned. But I will say that this film is going to change some people's point of views on things. And as Riley said in the little trailer, these mountains are ancient, and what's here has been here longer than any of us ever have. And this trip definitely changed a few people's lives, and it's just so real, and be out there finding footprints, hearing the noises, and being surrounded at base camp, hearing these things hollering at us and being whistled at and everything else, and being down there in the woods, no lights, and being surrounded. And there is something that happened to me that I did not tell anybody when they were out there until after. But what happened to me was, after Riley and them had left, and you all will see why in the film, me, Brian, Doc, Drewski, and Kevin decided to stay behind. And I'm not sure if we got this part in the film or not. I'm not 100%, so I won't talk too much about what happened then. But we decided to work our way out after what had happened to us. And I'm in front of everybody else. And so we start to go up the holler to go back to base camp. And I have this voice, like my ears started ringing and buzzing. And something said, "Get out of here now." Like, my ears were fuzzy, my ears were ringing, like everything was cloudy, and whatever it was like in a Native American voice. I don't know, but it said, "Get out of here now." So that was only my second time experiencing the mind speak, but that time was definitely a fight or flight, and I took flight, and I booked it out of the woods, and everybody followed suit behind me because I'm like, all right, come on, let's go. So they all just followed in behind me, and I just recently told them about this because it's hard to talk about, you know, because you have something like that in your head, and it's hard to think that these creatures can do that, but they can.
Well, it's funny how the timing of all this worked out because, funny enough, I was actually recording an episode for Riley's show with him last night. And so he didn't go into too many details. Don't worry, he didn't spoil everything, but he was talking a little bit about this whole weekend and experience that you guys had. And, you know, not to put words in his mouth, but like this was a profound experience that he had. And it seemed, you know, like you said, life changing. And it's pretty cool to hear, you know, this story from multiple people. Like you could always, even if they're your buddies or whatever, you could chalk it up to, oh, if one person says something, well, maybe. But like, you know, when you hear enough, the same story enough times from enough people, I mean, there's probably something to it. So I can't wait to follow this project and see where it goes and ultimately see the film because I've heard a lot of cool stuff about it already. So
I posted it on TikTok and it's almost at 250,000 views. So it blew up. So it blew my mind. So it's so real and so awesome, you know, and there's a lot of people that's wanting to see it. So it's definitely going to put Appalachia on the map and raise a little bit of awareness because that's my whole end game with all this is raising awareness and keep people from acting like idiots in the woods and don't throw their trash out in the woods because when I went out a few weeks ago I found this big old trash pile and boy did it piss me off. Oh my gosh, I was so mad. So I put a trail camera up right there so I'm gonna find out who it is and they're gonna pay for it because that's one thing I can't stand is people trashing God's country, and it's just Lord of mercy. No, just puts lots of fire into me.
Stay tuned, guys. This is our last break.
But if you guys enjoyed this show and think we deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes or Spotify or any other podcatcher you use. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you guys. Now feel free to skip past these ads so we can get back to the show.
And now we're getting back to the bazaar.
So I guess kind of start and completely wrap up towards the end, man. If anybody wanted to be able to keep tabs on that project, when that's coming out exactly, get with you about even giving up some of their Sasquatch reports or following any of the work that you're doing, any of that stuff, man, where can everybody come and find you on the internet and where can people come and get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. For more on Operation Smoke, be sure to go follow my good friend Doc Brown at Prometheus Lens Podcast. He's the man behind the film. And I'm also going to give a shout out to everybody else again. Drewski and his boys from Cryptid Warfare Podcast. Riley from Midwest Mythos Podcast. Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress. Kevin from Where the Weird Ones Are. And, you know, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Bigfoot Reports and Data, and also on YouTube. If you want to reach out to me on Messenger. That's probably the best way, Harley Owens. But, yeah, it's just I'm very honored, blessed, and humbled to do what I do. And, you know, I don't push my agenda on any of this. You know, what I believe is what I believe. And, you know, I encourage everybody to be open-minded about this stuff. And, you know, it never hurt. It never hurt anybody to be open-minded, and I've learned that in this world you have to be open-minded because everything is not as we seem. And I always tell everybody, you know, start your day where the mystery never ends because there's always something that you'll see day to day that'll make you question what's really going on in this world.
Ain't
Very
that the
well
truth?
said.
Well, man, we appreciate you making the time to come on today. We appreciate you doing it last minute. And at some point, we'll definitely have to do a round 2, round 3, whatever, because I'm sure that we've barely even scratched the surface on a lot of the stuff that you guys have been doing and the experiences that you've had.
Absolutely, man. There's more where this came from, and there is more to come.
Well, Harley, it was so nice to meet you for real, and I look forward to getting to hang out with you here in a couple of months in Gatlinburg at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference. So looking forward to that.
Absolutely, man. I look forward to it as well. Maybe we can drag Shayn down.
We'll get them all drunked up on moonshine.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know if you no, you weren't around the following morning, dude. That last time we were at when we were in Ohio, we're all sitting around that bonfire, we're all just drinking, hanging out. I didn't realize how far in I got, man. I woke up the next morning and the kids wanted to go and like hang out at the pool and all that shit, and I was just like trying to hide the fact that I was like in the bathroom throwing up. Like,
oh no.
Like the kids are like trying to swim in the pool. They're like, "Oh, come in with me." I'm like, "Oh, I gotta go to the bathroom real quick." Like every 5 minutes. And then as we start going to leave, Gabby goes, "Oh yeah, let's get some Raising Cane's." And anybody that knows me, as soon as I go, south of Michigan, I got to get some Raising Cane's. And I was like, "Oh, I think I'm just gonna do a sweet tea." And she's like, "Oh, you're hungover, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, a bit."
Just blame it on Uncle Orin.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how deep I got. That'll happen when you're just sitting there hanging out, and then all of a sudden it's been like 4 hours. You've been sitting there drinking. You're like, "Shit, I'm 12 deep."
That wasn't even moonshine. So.
Oh no. They drinking twisted teas. That's what it was.
If you guys enjoyed today's conversation and you guys want to show some love, smash that follow icon and share today's episode with a friend. Grassroots support from listeners like you guys is exactly how this show grows. So thank you.
And if anybody wants to get up with us for any reason whatsoever, Shayn, tell them how they can do that.
First and foremost, you guys can email us at bizarreencounters@outlook.com, or you guys can also get a hold of us through social media, Instagram or Facebook, whatever's easier for you guys. Or you guys can also get a hold of us through the submission form, which of course is available off of the link tree. And then the last way you guys can get a hold of us is through our hotline number. You guys can text or call that, whatever's easier. And that number is 313-364-1551. And it doesn't matter how you guys get a hold of us. Just make sure that you guys get a hold of us, because we would love to talk to you guys.
And if you guys get a chance, please show some love to our awesome sponsors and friends of the show. We've got our buddies Rick and Hans with I Know Squatch for all your squatchy gear needs. We've got our buddy Dave, a.k.a. the Snarly Yow, with Snarly Yow Natural Products. He's got some bath... I guess not bath bombs. What is it?
Natural body products pertaining to beard oil, beard balm,
beard oil, body
soap,
wash,
all that good stuff, all natural stuff.
He's got like fucking beef jerky sticks now, puts on kick-ass events. Anyway,
always expanding.
Show him some love. We love Dave the Snarly Yow. Also, our buddy Joe with Crypto Theology for all your wowable cryptids.
As you can see today, wearing the Wendigo shirt.
You're doing some product placement there. And also Big Ape Threads.
And if you guys also have a chance, don't forget to go and check out our awesome friends that have given us affiliate links. And those people are Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule. And you guys can get additional discounts and credits, which more information on those is available down in the show description.
And as always, all the shit we've mentioned is in the link tree in the show description.
And just like this conversation got about halfway through as soon as we started getting into CERN, because, we like to get it weird. As soon as we start getting into CERN stuff, always, guys, stay bizarre. Bizarre. Bizarre.
Bigfoot is a Nephilim?